Hi, everyone, and good night, or good evening, good Abend, where I am in Texas. So I hope to see some of you tonight as we are doing our differentiation course office hours. So even though the basic topic of this tonight is differentiation, any questions that you have about it, I'm also open to answering other questions. So I've got some specific things that I want to address with regard to differentiation that have been questions from people in the course or issues that I've seen in some of the responses. And in particular, something about grading, which I've done an entire discussion about grading differentiation or differentiated work, but it's kind of come around again. And I had a pretty strong disagreement with a teacher about it. So I really want to share that. So I can see some of you coming in and I really appreciate it. If you want to throw in the chat, I should be able to see the chat both in from Facebook and YouTube. So if you want to share with me where you're from or your name or what your role in education is, and if you have a question, please feel free to throw it in the chat there and I will answer them. So let me share this first thing about grading differentiated work. So the question came from a teacher writing who said that, you know, he's giving his students, and these students are third graders, he's giving these students like tiered assignments, and he's got some of his gifted kids who are getting these like more. Oh, Bernadette from Melbourne. Oh, are you guys still in lockdown? Our family in Sydney is still like super locked down. So I hope that you guys are getting a little bit better there. So he's got these third graders, and the high ability kids are getting this top tier work, and it's more complex, it's more difficult. And then he has kids who are getting like the more on level work, the kind of mid-tier work. And he said, you know, those kids will be answering the questions. Questions are easier than the top tier, and they'll earn an A. And then the kids who are doing that top tier work, they're not doing it as fully as it could be done. And so they're getting, you know, they're earning like a B. And so, well, hi, Wendy. So nice to see you. And Ohio. Oh, you guys, I love Ohio. Oh, I'm sorry. So sorry to hear that, Bernadette. You know what, Alice? I'm going to be in Ohio. I'm coming to Toledo in person, October 12th and 13th. I'm going to be at the Education Service Center in Findlay, Ohio, those 2 days. Super exciting to see people in person. So my argument against that practice, where he's got these high ability kids and they're doing more difficult questions, and they're not doing as well, they're getting a B, and then the kids who had the easier questions are getting an A. If you were going to write a book on differentiation and how to annoy students and parents and make a practice completely indefensible to administrators, that's where I would start, because you can't punish kids for challenging work. And when I said, well, you know, if they're working above grade level, they have to be graded as if they are in that grade. You can't say, okay, I'm giving them more challenging work and I'm going to grade these third graders as if they are in fourth grade. So, I loved Nordonia. My time there was so great. Thank you, Alice. And Wendy, it is so good to see you. I hope these office hours will be helpful. My plan is to do them every single month. So here's the thing, is that at the heart of differentiation has got to be fairness. There has to be fairness in the structure, because otherwise it's not differentiation. You are in a different form of morefferentiation. It's not morefferentiation in the sense of more work, but it's morefferentiation in the sense of an expectation that is more than what is necessarily fair, equitable to expect at that grade level. So if I'm a third grader and I'm being challenged and I'm answering something where it's harder than what some of my peers are doing, then you can handle that a couple of different ways instead of this. So one of the things that you can do is ask a couple of the same questions, those same like standard questions that the mid-tier is getting. Have your high ability kids answer a couple of those. This works in an assessment type situation as opposed to like a product piece that they're creating. I'll talk more about that in a second. If they're taking a test, put in the standard questions. You can do two ways. You can either put in a couple of those standard questions and base the majority of their grade on that, and then put in a couple of the higher ability questions and then allow that to be bonus. So like maybe if they, maybe 70% of the tests are those more standard questions, and then 30% is at a higher challenge level. And those 30% are maybe fewer in number, but more challenging. However, if they answer them as well as a student who is in the middle tier, if they answer them as well as that, they still need to earn the score. And the way that you will share the differentiation with them is that you would give them feedback. So we need to split out evaluation or feedback and the grade. So the grade that goes in the grade book needs to make sense, but for the grade level that they're in, but the evaluation can be different. Okay, Denise, your question literally just made me laugh out loud. So I'm going to answer that in just a second. So the second option when you're looking at a test is to do what I actually mentioned this last time, where in the test, allow the students to choose their own adventure. So for example, offer a bunch of low-level questions and the students have to answer more of those, like say, pick 21-point questions, or 4 5-point questions, or 2 10-point questions. And then that way you can make those more challenging questions 10 points, and it's up to the student to choose to answer that. So they can make essentially a test menu. So if they want to just answer low-level questions, they can do that. And if they are willing to take a risk, and some people would say that, well, that's not really fair because your high ability kids may choose that low level. And I think it's perfectly reasonable for you to say to a high ability kid, you can do 10 of the low level questions, and then I want you to pick the other points from the challenge. You've just got to have some fairness in there. So the second thing I would say, in addition to structuring it that way for a test, is, and this goes to Bernadette's issue, is that we have to challenge them and keep them moving forward. But I agree with that completely. And we have to scaffold them in that. We can't beat them down. We can't say, well, you should be able to be performing at that. Nobody's asked you to do that before. I'm starting it now. And my expectation is you're going to immediately perform at that level. That isn't going to work, right? So what we have to do is say, the grade in the grade book is this. But let me show you how this needs to improve. And over the course of a period of time, then make it harder and harder to get that A, right? Make it harder and harder to get the A. But you can't start with that in August or September, right? You have to build to that, because you're not only helping kids learn how to function in a differentiated environment, but you're also helping them understand how to truly challenge themselves and push into risk. And one of the real dangers in punishing them with an unfair grading practice like this is that you will discourage them, and that they will feel like so defeated, and they will not want to take risks. It will activate that perfectionistic gene. And so we really want to make sure that anybody looking at it would say, oh yeah, that's fair. And the key is to separate evaluation from grading. We get a little bit too fixated on grading and too little fixated on evaluation. So one of the other things that you can do to make this practice more fair is allow the child who had the challenge assignment, you can either scaffold it by putting in some kind of template for them to use at first, or you can allow them to redo it and improve it. So those are just a couple of ideas, but I would say it would be an extreme bad practice. I would call it a malpractice to have it be where I do easier work and I can get an A, and you do harder work. You did better work than I did, but you got a lower grade because your work itself was more challenging. That will never fly. That will never fly. So do not do that. Okay. And I may come back to this again because I've seriously thought about it every single day for like the last 3 or 4 weeks. Okay, so Denise's question, do you have a concise definition of differentiation you can give the student teacher? Her evaluating teacher thinks it's different colored paper and pencils. That is so funny, except for how it's so sad. So if I'm in an elevator and somebody asks me what's differentiation, the elevator speech that I would give for differentiation is matching the learning, and I'll give you a slightly longer elevator speech in just a second, but matching the learning to the learner. So it means adjusting the content, process, product, and the environment, those 4 things, to meet the abilities and needs and interests of a student. So it is not going to necessarily, the only way it would be different colored paper and pencils is if like that's a differentiation in the environment by choice or interest, but that is like the most shallow possible and could only be called differentiation if you were casting the widest possible net, and it would obviously be completely inappropriate and insufficient differentiation of any meaning. So with differentiation, we're accepting that our learners are different and some are capable of achieving and working at different levels from other students, and we're going to meet them at that level. So that would be my elevator speech. Differentiation is making sure that the challenge of the content and the process and the product match the cognitive and social emotional needs of the learner. That's what I would say. And it will always involve in adjusting the content itself, the process by which the students learn that content, and the process by which they demonstrate that learning. So yeah, Tomlinson's differentiation model is good. It's broad, right? So, and that's really what I cover in the differentiation course, and there are books on differentiation, but all of differentiation is going to look at environment, content, process, and product. So, but if you're just going to explain it very quickly, concise definition, that's what I would say for that. And I'll see if more questions come in, I will answer them. While there isn't a question right now, I'm going to answer one that came in to my email. And this is not a differentiation question, but I think it goes to the heart of differentiation in the sense of how undervalued our gifted students can be and how many different forms that takes. So it is undervaluing a gifted student to not have differentiation. I was just talking with an administrator, the gifted and talented director of a school district on the East Coast today, and they use a pullout model in their school. And I said, yeah, I'm a fan of pullout as long as there is differentiation going on in the gen ed classroom. And she just looked at me, right? I think that's true. Okay, he asked the person in charge of the whole program who said differentiation was make sure we give the content in different ways. I mean, that's not untrue, but it's only partly true, and different ways has to actually be meaningful. It can't be shallow. I mean, giving it in a different way, like what, I'm going to say it in Spanish instead of English or French or something like that. Like that's just silly. That has to be actually different. Oh, so Denise, like group work, scavenger hunt notes, individual work, paper-based, computer-based, that's a differentiation by product that can just as easily be interest-based as actually ability-based, right? Because group work is not necessarily more challenging than individual work. In fact, it can be significantly easier, not usually for the gifted. Usually group work causes big problems for gifted kids. But I have a lot about that in the course. If you've taken the course, you know. But having it be like, so individual work and group work are just two variations of of process, but they're not, I mean, they're just both grouping strategies, whether they're individual, whole group, or small group, or like partner work, paired work. That can be a differentiation strategy, but not necessarily. If I'm just grouping to group and I have no, like there's no rhyme or reason and there's no inherent challenge or lack of challenge in any of it. Scavenger hunt or paper-based, yeah, gifted kids preferred group size is clearly it's 1, right? They have like post-traumatic group work syndrome, like the whole identified gifted population. So paper-based versus computer-based is not differentiation. That would be differentiation of the process just by interest usually, or sometimes by necessity. There are some things that have to be done on paper, some things that have to be done on computer, but just having one person use a computer, like having one person read on a device and one person read paper is a definite disadvantage to the person reading on a device, because we know that reading comprehension is much lower on a device than it is on actual paper. Even me, like I'm actually working on a depth and complexity Halloween resource right now, and I print out the stories I'm using. Like I write on actual paper. Reading comprehension is just much higher on paper, so that would be a problem. So I think that there's obviously a misunderstanding there, and it's very distressing that that's what the person in charge of the whole program said. I'm wondering, the person in charge of the whole gifted program or the whole like student teaching program? Curious about that. Okay, so Bernadette says, I'm working at a school which delivers the MYP International Baccalaureate program. Okay, the problem I have is that they seem to have difficulty differentiating summative tasks. You know, Bernadette, that is a common issue. That's a common difficulty. And the reason is that mostly we think of summative tasks as being, oh, well, this is, this counts a lot. A lot of times it's weighted heavily, and we think of it as tests. But some of how we can differentiate summative assessments more easily is if we consider that the summative tests, the summative assessments, purpose is to demonstrate learning mastery. And how are we going to do that? And a lot of times they're looking at just like, I was going to say paper pencil tests, but it could just as easily be, on a computer, a Google form or something like that. And when we do that, okay, Wendy, I'm going to address that in a second. When we do that, I lost my change of thought. I read Wendy's question and I lost my thing. When we have, I know it's like when we give them a paper pencil test, when we do that, I think sometimes what we do is that we focus too much on the actual, like the actual test part rather than the demonstration of learning part. And if we would see it more from that perspective, it makes it much more easy to differentiate that. If you're trying to differentiate it by the way in which they can demonstrate the learning. So like if you're going to say, rather than a paper pencil test, I'm going to let them create a presentation and present it to a real live audience. I think that by itself of like not differentiated summative assessments is basically just a foundational misunderstanding of what differentiation is, just a lack of skill in differentiation. It just takes practice and it takes learning. When you are differentiating assessment, you can do it a couple of different ways, right? Like you can offer essay questions instead of multiple choice. That's probably the easiest way, because essay questions will always require greater thinking. If I were going to do that, I would start by offering it as a choice rather than forced. Start offering a choice. And a school that's an IB school should be very comfortable with offering essay versus, or even skewing the balance of it, where, like if you're going to differentiate the assessment, you're going to have your on-level students doing more of the like multiple choice type questions and fewer short answer and essay. And then that will be reversed for your very high ability population. One of the things that I've seen in IB schools, and I was an an IB coordinator for a very short period of time, so I really shouldn't even say that, but I was at a school that was an IB school, and I wasn't the coordinator. That's too strong. I have to take that back. I worked with IB at a school that was an IB school, and one of the things that I saw in the IB program in general is the basic belief that it itself is sufficient, and so there was some resistance to differentiating meaning of gifted kids, because it's kind of like Garrison Keillor's Lake Wobegon, where everyone's gifted. And so we don't need to do that. So that may be where some of the resistance is coming from. Also, it tends to be just a slightly more like set and formulaic program in a way. And so people get nervous about differentiating it because they're worried. In some ways, like it can be that way as well. But I would maybe suggest coming up with a couple of examples. So if you want to email me an example of a kind of assessment that you mean, I can give you some specific examples of how I might do that. Okay, so Wendy says that the teachers have no idea how to differentiate. She's at a new school. She has to be careful how to approach it. And she said, I had a really frustrating conversation with two teachers yesterday about a 2E student who doesn't do any work in class, so they don't think he's gifted and shouldn't come with me for any pull-out work. I kept gently trying to explain that maybe if they gave him work that is at his level, he would do something in class. Okay, so there are a couple of issues going on here. First of all, we can't punish kids. We can't use GT as a punishment, right? That's like saying, if you don't brush your teeth, I'm not going to let you take a shower. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And we're cutting off our nose to spite our face, because giftedness and behavior do not necessarily correlate either way. We can get very, very well-behaved, very diligent, task-committed, highly gifted students, and we can get lazy kids who or kids who have other issues. Lazy is probably too loaded of a term, but kids without some of those traits who are also gifted. And we get all those populations in both the typical learner and the struggling learner. And when you get kids who are twice exceptional, it becomes even more difficult. Those same teachers would be fired if they said, well, I've got this kid on an IEP and he's not working in class, so I'm not letting him go to his special ed class. They get literally fired. So to me, it's discrimination against GT kids. Now, that said, let's address this issue. This kid needs to understand that we've got to work something out so that his teachers can see who he is. So if he's not working in class, if he's not putting forth any work, if he's not doing the work there, how are they supposed to know that he can do more challenging work? He's going to have to show them that he's mastered the work, and he's going to have to do it. And it's more of a challenge for gifted kids. I mean, it's so easy to say, just find a way, right? But the fact is, it's unfair to expect a teacher to say, yeah, this kid isn't doing anything, therefore I can tell he needs more challenging work. So one thing you could ask them is, you could ask them if they could share with you something that they're going to be working on in class, and if you could look at it and see if you could find a way to make it more challenging for that student, and then have them give it to that student in lieu of what the rest of the class was doing, and see how he does. Because that would be kind of an A/B test of your theory. The fact is that even though this is true for some kids, that if they're given appropriate work, that they will work harder, it's not true for every kid, and especially not twice exceptional kids, depending on the exceptionality, right? Like, I mean, my grandparents are deaf. That doesn't have anything to do with their assiduousness in school. So, but if you have a kid who is on the autism spectrum, who's oppositionally defiant, who has ADHD, those kinds of things can have a deleterious effect on how diligent they are in class. So I would A/B test that. I would see if he does work better when given more challenging work. I would also look at, I just don't know if it's appropriate to just don't know if it's appropriate to share. It probably is. If you're comfortable, like, I don't know where you are, but maybe I want to know what the exceptionality is, because it's going to influence my answer. You know what, Wendy? Shoot me an email and tell me privately what that exceptionality is. If you have access to your email, do it now. Just lisa@giftedguru.com. Or because I'll pull up my email on another computer. And if not, later, and I'll address it next time. Okay, so Denise said the head of the student teaching program. And what they're saying is so incomprehensive that it's incorrect. So Denise says, I'm going to ask if what they're saying wasn't really correct or comprehensive. So Denise, you know what? This is a really good opportunity for your student teacher to understand that in education, people in charge almost never understand fully everything that they're in charge of. And this is Peter's principle, right? We get promoted to the level of our inexperience, because administrators get over such broad things that they can't possibly have mastered everything under it. And differentiation is so poorly understood and so poorly trained for the most part that it's forgivable that she might not know, but it's unforgivable that in not knowing she would say stuff that is wrong, and that is wrong. So just giving different options is not sufficient differentiation. Yeah, that's like saying a grilled cheese sandwich's only required ingredient is cheese. I mean, you got no bread. You just, it isn't working. Let's see. And if your student teacher wants to talk to me more about it, I'm happy to. Bernadette says differentiating formative tests is no problem. Yeah. Okay. The summative ones where they insist everyone must do the same thing, no exceptions. Yeah. I mean, I was talking about the summative ones. I just disagree. And I think that I wonder if they'd be willing to try it, to just try it one time and see what happens and see how the students work. The problem is if you are not, if you're differentiating the formative work and then you're not differentiating the summative work, how does that even work? Like, there's no, I mean, that's going to be unfairly easy for the high ability kids because they've been working at a higher level and then they're going to have to test at this lower level. That's kind of weird. Let's see. Skill, practice, and guidance. Depth and complexity is great. Oh, okay. ADHD. Oh, yeah. No problem. No problem. That's so common, right? Okay. ADHD. Let me see. I think I have it. Okay. I would look at. Sorry, I was looking to see if I had the copy of the book right here. And I think I gave my copy away. I do this a lot. So there's a book. I'll put it in the. I'll put a book in the chat. It is called Back to Normal, and the author's last name is now Lottie. This book is a it's like the subtitle of it is something like how normal childhood behavior became pathologized, basically. And I think there's a lot to learn in there about ADHD in general, but ADHD is a very difficult diagnosis because it looks so different in different kids. So you can have someone who is, so for those of you unfamiliar, well, probably all of you are, but just in case there's someone watching who's not familiar with ADHD, it comes in 3 fantastic flavors. You have, and then an optional flavor. So the first kind of ADHD is the kind that we used to call hyper when I was growing up. It is ADHD, the hyperactive type. These are the kids who are, literally bouncing off the walls, can't sit still, fidgeting, lots of like biting of nails, twisting of hair, tapping, constantly in motion, just exhausting to be around. The second type of ADHD is inattentive type. So they may have some of the symptoms of the hyperactive type, but not all. And they just have trouble focusing, unless it's a video game. So they have trouble focusing on anything that requires cognitive effort for any length of time or anything that they're disinterested in. They find it very, very difficult to focus. When somebody asked me one time, like, I'm trying to feel like it feels to have ADHD inattentive type. What would you say? I would say, imagine you are at the most boring professional development that you can ever imagine, and you were there for 400 years, right? Like, that's how they kind of feel all the time, just this inability to engage. It's like pathological boredom, really. They cannot engage in the task at hand. The third kind of ADHD is the combo platter. It's where they have both the hyperactive type and the inattentive type. Now, there's actually kind of this bonus that I mentioned, and that is that a lot of neuropsychologists believe that executive functioning disorders really are a form of ADHD. So executive functioning disorders being, not only completing your homework, but actually turning it in, right? Those that they believe, and one of them who said this to me, we were having a conversation, he mentioned this, is Paul Belgian, who I highly respect. He's a pediatric neuropsychologist. And he said he really does feel like attention deficit should encompass executive function deficit as well. It's not, he doesn't think it's two separate things. So you can get that. So one of the things is to work with the teacher to figure out, first of all, identify what kind of ADHD does this kid have? Because if he has the hyperactive type, I'm going to be doing, then changing the work will not affect his behavior in class. If he has the inattentive type, then it can, because if you give him something that he's more easily able to focus on, you can have a better result. If he has the combo platter, then it'll work a little bit, right? But you're going to have to find a way to allow for that physicality, that kinesthesia to happen in class. So then let's see. Oh, Denise, that is so sweet. You know what, Denise, I mentioned my email a second ago, lisa@giftedguru.com. Shoot me an email. I want to send something to your little student teacher there. I have a little heart for those student teachers and just anybody coming into this profession right now. We need them. And I think the teachers who we're getting right now are coming into the profession for the right reason, because they know it's hard and they know what they're getting into. And they are coming in at a crisis, and I just have so much respect for them and so much gratitude to them. All right, I want to mention the one that I said I got an email about that isn't really about differentiation, but strikes the heart of it, which is basically is complete disregard and disrespect for gifted children. So here's the scenario. This gifted ed teacher does a pullout at a school, and her administrator uses her as a sub whenever they need a sub. So the principal has a list of teachers to pull, but always pulls the gifted teacher and doesn't even put that, oh, your daughter was a first grade teacher last year, first year, first grade. If you can do that, friend, you can do anything. Wow. You know what, Wendy? Send me an email with your daughter's information. I'm going to send her some too. All right. So she said that she was consistently the first to get pulled last year. She's constantly having to cancel her own classes. So these kids aren't getting their GT class because their teacher's being pulled into sub. And she said her issue is it makes her feel unvalued. And is it really fair to keep canceling the gifted ed class because they'll be fine without having your class versus the reading support students really need that teacher? Wow. You don't even want to know. I actually thought a bad word when I read that email. When I need to be gone from the building, I am subbed, but I've been told it's because they want someone that they can pull to other rooms. What are your thoughts? You really want my thoughts on? Okay. She said, I want to be a team player and help in this crazy time, but I feel there's an injustice. I don't know how to communicate these feelings when I know or feel that my position isn't valued in the first place. And as I'm typing this, I just got pulled to sub in kindergarten. Okay. So here's what I would say. First of all, I could talk all night about this. I actually think I need to turn this one into an article on the website. But what I would say is that there's just a lack of fundamental understanding and support of the gifted program. And so the first thing that I would do if I were you is identify who your allies are, like who is in charge of the gifted program. in your district. And I would go to them first. The reason I would go to them first is because when you go to your own campus administrator, yes, Bernadette, I completely agree with you. The parents of the kids in that program should be up in arms that their kids are missing class for that reason. It is, I think it's possible that during COVID, we have had people, the virus that must not be named. I feel like during COVID, we've had people who got into habits that were not necessarily fabulous. And it's been easy to keep some of those habits. Now, some of our habits are good. We did learn some good things that we'll keep, but there were some things that need to go away. Okay, so first, identify who is in charge of the program and seek their counsel and advice first. The reason is that when you do go to your principal, eventually this is going to go up, and you want that person who's over the program to already know about it, to be in the loop, and to know that you've been following their advice, because it will be easier for them to support you. So I would go there and I would explain the situation fully. Now that is what I really would do. Then I would take their advice. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that there is no person in charge of the program. Like, you don't have anyone to talk to. It's just you. Then the first thing I would start doing is, for like a month, maybe, I would document it. I would document all the times. Now, I don't know what state this person is in. In some states, this would actually be a legal violation. So, but there's so few states that that's true that it's probably not even worth addressing. But I would document it, because if you go in and just say, I feel like I'm always being pulled out of class, that doesn't hold as much weight as if you can say, last month, my class was canceled 36% of the time, right? That's better data, and administrators thrive on data. So go to the principal with data. Also go with a little bit of support. And the way that you can get that support is basically what Bernadette just alluded to, which is that the parents should be upset about this. So you're not going to try to rile the parents up and have them complain to the principal. That will not make anyone happy with you. But what you can do is you can send an email to the parents of the kids in your class saying, unfortunately, I had to be pulled out of unfortunately, I had to sub in such and such a class today and was unable to provide the gifted services to your child. And so I am, I'm sending you some of the things that we were going to do in case your child would like to do it, or is looking for something, or is bored or over vacation and is kind of looking around for something to do or whatever, right? Like, so just so you let the parents know, and then you send it again and you send it again, right? I'm so sorry. We had to cancel class today because I had to go sub in another class, and the parents will start to notice the pattern. And then it can slowly, go that way. The second thing is, I don't know what grade, well, she said kindergarten, so it is an elementary school. One of the things that you can do is to also get if there is an assistant principal, not just principal, get the assistant principal on your side. So if you've read Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point, you know that it's very important to identify who has the actual power. And in some schools, it's actually the AP who has more power in these kinds of things like scheduling. So you need to find out who has the power. And it may not be an AP or the principal. It may actually be a long-term teacher. And I would just find out who has the power in this environment, and I would get them on your side. I would go to them for advice, and that's how you get people on your side. You go to them for advice, and you say, I know that this, what would you do in this situation? I really value your opinion. And I wouldn't say it in the sense of, you're not whining. You're just saying, my heart's breaking for my kids because I know they need this class. And then one of the things that you can also do to add to the data that you're going to share with the principal about how many times you're being pulled out is to pull up the data on the social emotional needs of gifted kids and and why the gifted course. Look at your district policies about this. Why is this program existing? Like, why are these kids being identified in the first place? So that you can say, we're identifying them in order to serve them in this way, and we're unable to do it. So you just got to go step by step. Start with your district administrator if they're not available, or if they if you don't have one, then collect data for a month. And actually, what time is it now? It's the end of, I'd collect data through the end of October, from now to the end of October, and just collect the data and then go in. And when you do, you have to approach it from the perspective of, how can you make this better for the school? So you're going to need an alternative. So whether it's something like, well, if we pull the kids out of GT, if we don't allow them to go to GT, how do you suggest that we meet their needs? Like, how should we do this, right? We're under a mandate to do this. How do you suggest that we do it? Or you can say, ask them to come to your class so that they can see and gain a better appreciation for what the kids really do get when they come, because it sounds like the principal here just does not understand the value of GT, and you're just going to have to educate her very gently, or him. All right. So Rachel is saying, how do you differentiate up for secondary folks? I'm the GT coordinator in my district, but came from elementary. Help. Okay. Well, welcome, Rachel. I have a daughter-in-law named Rachel. So the difficulty with secondary, and I come to this, I taught elementary and then I taught secondary. So the difficulty is secondary teachers, for the most part, and this goes back actually to the question about IB, because this tends to be true of IB as well, which is that people are much more connected to their content, right? So it's much more common for a secondary teacher to have a degree in the content they're teaching. So they'll have a degree in history and be teaching social studies. They'll have a degree in English and be teaching English. They'll have a degree in biology and be teaching science, right? As opposed to elementary school teachers who very, very commonly have a degree in education or in general studies or something like that, right? Early childhood education, psychology, whatever, right? And so a lot of times secondary teachers are way more married to their content than they are to the idea of being a teacher. They see their level, they see their role as, I am an English teacher, whereas a teacher who teaches elementary school would see themselves as a teacher, not I'm a fourth grade teacher, right? Because they know they could just as easily be teaching third grade next year or fifth grade next year, right? Like they're a little bit more fluid in their thinking, a little bit less invested in the actual content, partly also because they're more likely to be certified in and to teach multiple content areas. Like my elementary school certification is a generalist, meaning I can teach every content area from pre-K through sixth grade, including PE, art, and music. And so a lot of times our secondary teachers struggle because they do not see themselves from the same lens that elementary does. They tend to be a little bit more rigid and inflexible. And I know I feel bad saying this because they are my people, but I just know that this is true. They go to professional development and it's like, oh, you're not talking about what this looks like in an AP US history class. I'm tuning out, right? Like, it's like, well, that's what I teach. And so instead, so we have to approach it from a different place, because a lot of times the secondary teachers don't have as much experience with differentiation as elementary school teachers do. And so we have to make sure that they understand the value of it to themselves. So the value in differentiating for secondary primarily is twofold. The way that I get secondary teachers on board with differentiation is, number one, how it is a time saver. And number two, how it will help them. So the way that is a time saver, a couple of ways. Number one is that when you differentiate for your students, you're going to write fewer emails to parents. You're going to be in fewer parent-teacher conferences. You're going to have like fewer opportunities where you're going to be spending time doing things you don't like to do, right? Okay, and Bernadette pulls up a really important point that that secondary teachers, there tends to be a strong test focus, exam focus, and so sometimes there's some worry there, right? And that is a really good point, Bernadette. So the second thing, in addition to time savings, is how is it going to benefit them in general? So the general benefit of differentiation is that when students' needs are being met in a classroom, you're going to have a classroom that is more pleasant to be in. You are going to have fewer discipline problems, and you are going to basically, it is going to bring you closer to being the teacher who you became a teacher to be. A lot of times, our secondary teachers don't understand that differentiation is the process by which they get to live their inner life of teacher fantasy, where the kids are so excited to learn and they love what you're teaching, and they're as passionate about it as you are. Well, the kids who are going to do that for you are your gifted kids. The gifted kids are going to get your jokes. The gifted kids love the trivia. They love the backstory. They can read the harder stuff. The book that you loved, they too can love. And this is one of my very favorite quotes. It was not said about education, but I feel like it applies. It's Wordsworth. He said, "What we will love, others will love, and we will show them how." And with differentiation, that's the process by which we do that. So the way that I lure secondary teachers to the dark side is by showing them what's in it for them, right? Like, let's differentiate for these high level learners, because when we do, your life will be easier and you will have more time. Now, when you first start differentiating, it is going to take a little bit of extra time until this stuff gets to be second nature to you, and until you build up a repository of stuff, right? And so what I would suggest them is just pick one thing per, like when they're first starting, just invite them to maybe try one thing per grading period. One exercise, one activity, one, it doesn't have to be a whole unit, right? Like, just try it and then massage it, see what happens. The other thing you can do is look for some secondary teachers in the district who are either already differentiating, who might be willing to provide some in-district brief PD, whether it's in person or whether they just record some stuff and send out, because sometimes it's easier for teachers to hear about it from other teachers, like sideways rather than top down from the district. It can feel more like just one more thing that the district is asking them to do. Whereas if they hear about it from another teacher, like, hey, I tried this. Another thing you can do is at secondary, teachers are way more likely to be isolated, meaning I may be the only, like, I know I was the only AP comparative government teacher on my campus, for sure. The only AP comparative government teacher on my campus. And so if you can create a shared space where teachers can share lesson plans and ideas with each other, so that like all the secondary teachers who are teaching the same subject can put lesson plans in a same place, or not even full lesson plans, but like ideas, like this is something I did, and then they can be sharing, then they don't feel overwhelmed and like I have to do everything myself. So if you can facilitate that. If you could also, if there's nobody that you can find who's actually currently differentiating, and the way to find that out is to ask campus administrators, because they're doing the walkthroughs. So ask them, are there anything? Is there anyone you're seeing who's differentiating? If not, if no one is, then ask campus administrators if they could identify one or two teachers on their campus who are open to pedagogy, like who seek it, who like it, and then get them some training. Get them some training in differentiation, and let them let them be your, basically your like recruiters, right? And let it become part of the culture. This may take some time. Rachel. Like it is differentiation at a district level is a culture, and culture takes a long time to change. And so the next thing I would suggest is that the administrators need to be trained. So actually have, I need to record this, because I do a 1-hour training on how to evaluate differentiated practice for administrators. And when administrators start looking for differentiation, that's when teachers will start doing it. So we want to make sure that administrators are actually looking for differentiated practice when they go into the classroom, and teachers seeing it and feedback on walkthroughs and formal evaluation. Because until we have something being evaluated or tested, we have a tendency to not believe that it is valuable, right? And another thing that we're going to have to do is recognize that that this year would probably be a really good year to just start building culture through opportunity. So rather than saying, oh, you're doing it all wrong and we need to do better, it would be a good year to like identify the teachers who are interested and get them some training, and just start building that culture, get the administrators on board. I think that one of the main things that someone at the district level can do also is, if a parent group does not already exist, is to start a parent group, for the gifted and talented students, because the parents will be powerful in a good way. Because once parents know, first of all, if they know that the district cares about their kid's identity as a gifted kid, that's very helpful. But secondly, they will be expecting it, right? They're like, wait a minute. And then that gives you even a little bit more credibility, right? Like, this is an expectation of our stakeholders. So those are some of the suggestions that I have for that. So I love that question. And I love that at a district level, you are, that you're concerned about that and wanting to bring that. I think that we're going to be continuing to talk about differentiation for a long time, because it's just something that a lot of teachers are resistant to. They feel like it's just one more thing, and they have not yet seen how beneficial it can be to them. They think it's going to take time rather than save time. They think it's going to make the classroom management more difficult instead of less difficult. And so a lot of what you're going to have to do is to break down the misperceptions and misconceptions about that. So those are the places I would start, and I would do that. So thank you for asking the question. Well, I want to thank you all for joining in tonight. Again, I'm going to be doing these like once a month. I have not scheduled October's yet, because I've had to schedule it. Let's see. I don't know. I don't think they know how to do it effectively or at all this stuff, because they can't get started. Yeah. So Denise, if you can send me an assessment and I'll give you some ideas. I think they probably just need some training, really, just some training on differentiation, which I don't think is unusual. I think a lot of times people, I think probably 98% of teachers in the country are not, more than that in the world, are not well trained on differentiation. I mean, it's the reason I spent like over a month of my life, every minute of every day doing that. So I think that's really the problem. So let me go ahead and I'll do it right now. Let's schedule next month's. We will do Thursday night, October 28th will be the next differentiation office hours. Of course, you are welcome to come with any questions that you have. And I love this community that's built in the chat. So feel free to connect with each other. And if you are on the, if you're on the email list, you will get an email about them. Oh, you're not kidding, Bernadette. It should be compulsory. So at giftedguru.com/subscribe, go there, sign up for my email, and then you will get an email with the link ahead of this. And if you're on the YouTube channel, you subscribe to the YouTube channel and it will tell you when something gets scheduled. So you'll be there. And Stacy, that is the sweetest thing that anybody ever said. I was like, they'll be listening to you. No, I don't think my husband feels that same way. So thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. It just warms my heart to hang out with colleagues. So thank you. And Bernadette, props to you for coming in from Australia. I just love it. Makes me feel connected. My husband was actually we're huge rugby league fans in my family. And my husband was just watching a rugby league game. And it was his team playing against my son's team. And I was voting for my son's team. And my husband was like, I thought you loved me. But so shout out to you down under. So thank you again so much. And do not forget, Denise, don't forget to send me the email with a way to contact your student teacher. All right. And thank you, Wendy, for sending me the info for your daughter. And thank you all again. And I hope you have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend. And I will see you October 28th. Same bat time, same bat channel.